I'm bored. Let's read a book.
Before this video starts, I just want to let you all know that the new upload schedule, because I don't have to do school anymore, will be Monday, Wednesday, Friday, instead of Monday, Tuesday, Friday. So, with that said, let's get into the video. A face in the window caught my eye. What was Perlot doing at the shop? Destron was upstairs resting, and technically it wasn't my place to meet with another craft master. Setting down the plane, I crossed the room, sniffing at the smell of barley soup drifting down the stairs. We'd eaten earlier, but Destron had not. And Deirdre was probably feeding her father a late noon meal. Bostrick looked up. Keep at it. And think about where the grains will meet. It's just a tavern bench, but I heed the words of wisdom. I just looked at him until he began to check the lines of grain. Perlot had stepped inside the shop doorway and stood waiting. He wore his working leathers, but he had pulled on a rough shirt and vest. I apologize, craft master. Destron is not available at the moment. I inclined my head. No apologies needed, Laris. So, several of us are gathering at the top room after the day ends. And I was hoping you could join us. Your apprentice would be welcome to sit with Grizzard and the others. I kept my mouth in place. The invitation was serious, and, in effect, an announcement that the other crafters had accepted me. Had that been Brettle's doing, I thank you and would be honored. Perlot smiled faintly. I think we're the ones who are honored. Destron is fortunate to have found you, until tonight. He nodded and was gone. Only after he had gone did I sigh. Perlot himself had crossed the town and to the square to invite me. Maybe, just maybe, my plans might have a chance of working out. Bostrick glanced up from the bench as I walked back, his bushy red eyebrows lifted. We've been asked to join the other crafters for a drink after work. Bostrick just nodded as if it were the most natural thing in the world. For him, perhaps it was. I had encouraged him to spend his free time with the other apprentices, knowing that, if my hopes were fulfilled, he would need the contacts in the years to come. Picking up the plane, I studied the internal framework of a chest for a long time, knowing that something was not quite right. How long it took, I didn't know, but I finally ended up planning and readjusting one of the drawer supports for the second drawer. From there it got easier. As I entered the flow of the wood and the design, part of the problem was that the design was an adaptation of one of Dorman's plans, and even partially original pieces were much tougher. Laris, I shook my head, realizing more time had passed than I realized. Yes? Hadn't it is closed. The jeweler stayed open later than anyone else. I began racking the tools, noting that Bostrick had already been quietly putting away Destron's tools. Before long I had told Deirdre that we were leaving, and we washed up and were striding across the square. The only thing that bothered me was that I knew I'd have to clean Gerlach's stall when I returned, as well as get up in the morning to ride him. Clink, dink. We had to hug the edge of the mill street on the other side of the square as a troop of the prefect's cavalry rode in toward their barracks. 3 of the horses at the end were riderless, and a dark splotch stained the leather of the last empty saddle. The stink of sweat and blood hung over the riders like fog, not obscuring the taint of chaos that also clung to them and to the sabers they bore. To my senses, the blades shimmered like dull red embers. Clink, clink, clink. Make way, clink, clink, clink. Neither prisoners nor bodies trailed the empty horses. Looking at Bostrick once the cavalry passed, I shook my head. Bad news. He nodded and we kept walking. The tap-in had not changed. Even without a fire in the front hearth, the main room was smoky, as acrid as before. Laris! Perlet had been waiting, and I hurried over, leaving Bostrick to his own devices. Sorry, we worked a shade late, and then we had to wait for the prefect's troops. Perlet gestured around the table. This is Gerald, his son Daryl, Rastin, and Feralt. Usually Hurdle is here. He put a hand on my shoulder. This is Laris, who has decided to follow Dorman's tradition and give me a run for my money. Or would have if he hadn't decided to make children's furniture better than regular pieces. They all chuckled at that, and Perlet pulled out a chair. What will you have, Laris? I had to grin sheepishly. Just Redberry, master. Just Perlot, Laris, just Perlot. What's this about troops? Asked Daryl. I shrugged. I don't know, but a score of cavalry rode back in. They lost, it looked like, empty saddles and no prisoners, and they looked tired, some of those horses. I shook my head. Heck, muttered the man on the far side of the table. He's out squabbling with the Autarch again. The same thin girl with a scar across her face appeared next to Perlot. Her face was still thin, but a bulge below her apron indicated she had been more than merely flirting with someone. What else, masters? Redberry for Laris, here, and I'll have another beer. The craft master handed her his empty, heavy mug. The Autarch's already proved, after the way they dispatched those rebels from Freetown. I take it that the prefect should avoid trouble with Kyphros, I asked politely. Gerald cleared his throat. Gallus has a proud history, and the Autarch should honor that history and the natural geography. What he means, added the balding Feralt with a grin, is that the prefect wants old Gallus back, as well as some other territory. Feralt, snapped the other man. I said what I meant. He's on the prefect's advisory council, whispered Perlet. Are all the Autarch soldiers women? Heck no, added Daryl, setting his mug on the table with a thump. Just the best ones. Thunk, thunk. Here's the red stuff and the beer. 2, please. I handed 2 coppers to the woman. Perlet looked surprised, but did not protest. Women soldiers are uncivilized, added Rastin. What he means, explained Feralt, is that they only fight when they know they can win. Like that one Tormund was complaining about. The black-haired one the Autarch had promoted over his cousin? I swallowed a deep pull of the Redberry. Can someone explain? Rastin glared at Feralt, who grinned. Finally, Feralt shrugged. Tormund's married to my sister. His cousin is also Tormund, except he took service with the Autarch because of the former prefects. That's a long story. Anyway, the younger Tormund was in line to be sub-commander, except a new squad captain pulled some stunt with water and wiped out Freetown's rebels without a single casualty. The Autarch promoted her instead. Tormund challenged her to a duel, and the witch made him look silly. So he played dirty and threw something in her eyes. That didn't stop her. Instead, she took off his sword hand blind. He swears. The Autarch gave him a pension and a warning. You believe that? I asked. I did, but I wanted to know whether Feralt had said something else in mind. It's true, interrupted Gerald. The witch is from Recluce. The Autarch, Dingable witch as well, doesn't care. She only cares if her troops are the best. A momentary silence dropped over the table. Laris, what brought you here? Asked Perlot, almost desperately. Recluce, I'd have to say. I took a sip from the mug, trying to figure out how to tell the truth without being deceptive myself. As I told Perlot here, I gestured to the crafter. After leaving my apprenticeship, I was trying to make my way in Freetown when the old Duke ran afoul of Recluce. The rains came and turned the meadows to swamps. The clouds never left. When the Duke was dead and the wizards were running all over the place, I winced at the slight exaggeration. So I took what I had and got a pony and left. Why'd you come so far? And where were you from? Asked Gerald. I shrugged, as I told Destron I'm technically only an apprentice. And I don't have any guild certification. Hersbarg was too small to support another crafter, and... Have you seen Hewlett and Montgren? That brought a chuckle from everyone but Gerald, and I continued before he could ask me again where I was from. As for Jellicoe, you can't walk the streets without a permit and a seal. So what could a poor apprentice woodworker do? What would you have done? I addressed the question to Darrell. I guess I would have come to Fenard just like you did. How'd you get across the Eastthorns? It wasn't easy. It was cold, because I couldn't afford to stay in the inns there. And I couldn't, but not for reasons of cost. Still, misrepresentation hurt. The heavy snows hadn't fallen, but I had to wait until the caravan cleared one snowfall from the road. I was afraid poor Gerlach would be skin and bones by the time we got to Passera. How did you get into Jellicoe? Asked Rastin. Anything else around here? Asked the servant girl. Nothing for me, said Perlette. Nor me, I added. Another mug, me too, not here. I was lucky I ran into a healer and traveled with him for a while, but he had business in Jellicoe. Gerald frowned as he sipped from his heavy brown mug. Where'd you get that design for the chair you did for Ryson? Asked Perlette quickly. I looked through Darwin's plan book, then just made some changes to it to make it more suitable for Ryson. He's a diplomat, chuckled Furlt's ingenious way of bracing it. Do you mind if I try that? Not at all. You might find a better way, though. I did that in more of a hurry than I would have liked, or that Uncle Sardet would have advised, either. Why the child's table? That was Rastin. That started out as a project for Bostrick. He's turned out to have a real feel for the woods, and I wanted to give him something that, well... I finally shrugged, hoping they would understand. Even Gerald nodded slowly, although the frown never left his face. Maybe we ought to do more work like that, began Darrell. Some of the gentry pay well for the garb for the little ones. Why not furniture? Once I heard about the miniature palace and hammer. Thunk, 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 thunk. The girl dropped the heavy mugs on the table like mallets, one after the other. I glanced over at the table where the apprentices sat. They looked more relaxed, which reassured me. Bostrick seemed positively loquacious. Then he talks about grains, and more grains. About feeling the wood like you could see right through it. But it's scary sometimes, because I get the feeling he can... Heck, all of them can. Why, they're craft masters. One each, gents, snapped the serving girl, her tone crisper and shorter than the first time I had seen at the tap-in. What the other projects do you have lined up? Asked Gerald slowly. Not a lot. We're still scrambling. There's a corner chest and a door piece and another couple of benches for the horn inn. There'll be more, added Perlette, with all the praise you're getting from Wessel. We do the best we can. As the door opened, I turned to look and realized it was pitch dark outside. What about... began Durlock as he looked at Darrell. I'm gonna have to leave. I eased out of my chair. Destron's not feeling that well, and I never fed the pony. Won't you stay a little longer? Grumbled Gerald. I could tell his words were false, yet he wanted me to stay. I wish I could. Perhaps we could hear more the next time, added Perlette. I just nodded. in no way I wanted to tell more than I had already. On the way out, I stopped by Bostrick's group. You can stay a while, but I didn't wait for acknowledgement. Doesn't seem that scary, not all that old. As I stepped out into the night, I tried not to sigh. Sooner or later, and probably sooner, the speculation would push me into giving away too much. The afternoon clouds had cleared, and the stars glittered, with the new moon above the western horizon. Further down the market street, the lanterns from the Horn Inn flickered with the breeze that brought the scent of cut hay from the fields to the north of Fenard. Gerald, the man bothered me. Had bothered me since from the first time he had inspected my boxes in the open market. Even as early as in the night as it was, the streets had cleared. The good and the solid citizens for the most part having headed home. In Fenard, work started with the dawn. I suppressed a yawn, remembering that I had put off cleaning out Gerlach's stall. I rubbed at the end of my nose after the acrid odor of burnt grease left a lingering itch. Then picked up my steps as I passed the first cross street toward the square from the Tap Inn. Halfway toward the next street, I took several quick paces back into the shadows, wishing I had my staff with me. After turning away from the street, I heard some sounds. They were faint, almost inaudible. A cloak of reflection slipped around me, and I hoped I was doing the right thing, that the danger ahead was merely that of armed assassins and not a chaos master. 2 men appeared, slipping toward where I had been. Well, I could only see them, or I could only sense them, not see them. One was older, slight, tinged with a white-red fire of chaos. The other was just a hired blade, faintly disordered, but not chaos evil. They searched each side of the street, moving toward me. In turn, I moved from the shadows into the main street, where they would only look, while they might concentrate and poke into the corners and alcoves. Click. The second sound came from behind me, from the direction of the Tap Inn. I forced myself to breathe easily, standing flat against a brick wall between shops with their night shutters down. Feeling exposed and open, and relying on a reflective shield, the knife in my belt felt inadequate, especially against the drawn blades of the pair that walked toward me. From the inn came a second armed pair, searching and moving toward me. I almost held my breath as the bulkier assassin walked right by me, holding a blade at the ready. As soon as they were more than a few paces past, I took one quiet step, then another, edging toward the square and toward Destrin's. Disappeared. Left the inn. I saw him. He's not here. In one of the houses? I let them argue, stepping quietly toward Destrin's, not dropping the cloak until I was safely inside the stable. Gerlach whinnied. Yes, I know your stall's filthy. I didn't ride you today and you're out of food. The food came first, and I brushed Gerlach for a while, both to reassure him and to think. Then came the shovel and the pail. No one had told me about the mess horses make, or the enormous effort it took to keep one stall clean. Late indeed it was by the time I got back to the shop, and Bostrick was pulling out his bed. How'd it go? I asked, washing my hands again in the basin I had refilled. Fine. They said you won't stay here. That you're a wandering type. Is that true? Bostrick had more than a beer. Otherwise he would not have dared to ask the question. Not without his more overly respectful tone. I shrugged. Probably. Go to sleep. He did, and I thought about the armed men. Clearly Gerald had known something about it, but whether he had just known or actually put them after me was another question. The fact that all their swords had felt the same told me they were the prefect's men. I was running out of time, but so far no one apparently wanted to move directly. That forbearance wouldn't last. and I would have to watch for the assassins. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment, and subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss out on any of my videos. See y'all in the next one. Goodbye!